So today I want to talk about how to get the most from the rising stars in your team. And I'll explain what I mean by team, I'll explain what I mean by rising stars, and we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about what we mean by more. So what more do we want to get? So let's first of all start talking about your team, because teams have changed, and it used to be that the team were the people who you used to work with every day in your office. They'd come to work at 8:30 in the morning, they'd leave at 5:30, and that would be your team. But teams have changed now. So as an example, for one of the services that I offer, it's called Business Book in a Box, and it helps experts become published authors. You can go to businessbookinabox.com if you want to find out more about that. And I'm not going to tell you anything more about that. The point I want to make is that I work with a team of people who are actually a global team. So here I am in little old Perth, and this is the service that I offer, but I've got a team of other people. So in Sri Lanka and in the Czech Republic, I've got people who do the transcription. So I interview my clients and get their ideas out of their head. It gets transcribed by these two transcribers. I've got a team of writers, one in South Africa, two in Australia, who then take the transcript and write it. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who do other things. The cover design, I've got two designers, one in Canada, and another one in Hungary, and they do the cover designs for various clients. I've got proofreading, and that's done in Australia as well. So the proofreading and the final work on the book. In fact, the proofreading is done by my father, who's now he's retired. He was an accountant. He's retired. He's got a love of the English language. He's got the particular accountant mentality of being very precise and very detail oriented. So he's one of the proofreaders that I use, and just does a fantastic job. But the point I want to make is that we've got this now. When you think about your team, it is a global team, and they're not only the people who work full time with you or full time for you. You might have a global team. So in fact, let me run a poll to find out from the people in the room where in the world is your team. So I'm going to launch the poll now. If you've never done a poll before, it's very easy. It's anonymous. You just tick, in this case, as many of the boxes as are relevant. So it should be coming up on your screen now. So do you have people in your team who work in the same office as you? If so, tick that box. Yeah, that's like full time. Do you have some people who are sometimes in the office and sometimes not? Do you have people who are full time? Oh, sorry. Like all the time working in a remote office, so they're part of another team, or do you have people who are working, say, from home, who are working independently in your team, or is there some other? And if there's some other, just if you just share in the question box who the other is, because sometimes there are combinations of them. Okay, so most people have voted. Thank you for voting quickly. The vote's up to about 80% now, so I will stop when I get the 80% vote. I reckon the 80-20 rule is pretty good. So let me share the results for you. Right. Okay. So this is really interesting because I've run this poll a number of times with different groups, and most of the time there are. So in this case, this is the first time that I've seen that working in a remote office has been the highest. Obviously, the numbers don't add up to 100 because you can vote more than once for more than one of the options. But it's really interesting to see that there are, as you can see here, there's a huge range of options. In the past, say 15, 20 years ago, if we had the technology to run this poll. Most people would have ticked that first box and that box alone. But now we do have that diversity in your teams. Okay, so when we talk about your team and the skills that they need for the future and what you can do, think about not just the people who work in the office with you, but but everyone in your team, whether they're employed by you, whether they're freelancers, whether they're contractors, whatever position they have, what we're talking about today does apply to them as well. So let's start talking about the skills for the future. Now, the Institute for the Future, which is a wonderfully named organization, I think from the University of Phoenix in Arizona, they came up with a report which they called Future Work Skills 2020. And they identified 6 global megatrends that are affecting us around the world. So things are global in that they are affecting us globally, but also affecting everyone around the world. And as a result of those 6 global megatrends, here are the 10 skills that they identified as being vital for the workforce of the future. So just to save a bit of time, I'm not going to go through the 6 global megatrends, but I do want to talk about these 10 skills for the future workforce. So I'm going to go through those 10 skills, but I'd also like to do a little bit of discovery here. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think? So don't type anything just yet. I'm going to ask you, what do you think are skills that our future workforce is going to require? And that's you and your team members and everybody working in organizations. So don't type anything just yet. What do you think skills that the most important skills are going to be? So for example, I'll spot you one of them. The first one that they identified was sense making. So there's all this chaos out there. There's all this information. There's all this data. One of the most important skills for the future workforce is to be able to make sense of those things. So the people who can make sense of multiple sources of data and information overload, they're going to be people who are going to be valuable for your team. Okay, so that's an example, sense making. Now, we're not going to come up with the exact same names that they have, but I'm curious to know what they are. So the way we're going to do this, because I'd love this to be a collaborative effort, is if you go in your web browser to askgihan.com. You can go there now, and what we get is a virtual blackboard. So I'm just going to switch over to my web browser where I've got that open. And the way you participate here, instead of typing in the question box, because then only I get to see it, click in here, and what you do is just anywhere on this open green board or blackboard, double click and then type in the title what you think a skill might be. So I'm going to do sense making and just click somewhere else, and it appears there. So I'm going to just ask you to think about what do you think are the skills that we're going to need. So just click once for each skill that you want to identify and add as many as you want. So whatever skill that you think is required or is going to be required by future people at work, just double click in their box and just type what you want. Okay, so I'm going to give you the chance to do that. And whatever you type should appear for everybody. Okay, and let me just make the window bigger so we can see it. Okay, great. So again, this is anonymous, so someone's typed verbal communication, so thank you for that. And keep going. So if you can think of more than one, do, because we've got 10 that we're going to work through. Okay, so influencing skills has come up. Great. And just to give you a bit of a clue of some of the things that are happening, so that are in the list, some of them are going to be around like hard skills, like technology, and others are going to be soft skills. In fact, you've got like influencing skills, verbal communication, sense making, so data modeling. I would say that's more one of those hard skills. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, just so I can get through the. I'll tell you what those 10 are, but I'd like you to just think, even as I'm going through them, what some of those skills might be. So it's great. In fact, the 4 that we've got here, the 3 additional items, are actually in the list. You'll see them. They're not called that exactly, but they are in the list. So let me go through those 10 skills for the future. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because when you start thinking about the people in your teams, then and you're looking at giving them work for the future, then obviously it makes sense to help develop those skills that are going to be most valuable for you and your organization, as well as things that they're interested in. So let me go through those 10 for you. So here, and I'm going to give you a slide at the end of the list with all 10 of them in there. So you'll see them all in one slide, and I'll show that slide a couple of times. So you'll get the chance to write them down if you want to. Okay, so sense making is the first one, the ability to look at vast amounts of information and create meaning and significance from them. The next one is social intelligence. So in fact, that came up as being like influencing skills. Those sort of things are important. So the ability to read people and to interact and engage with people, both at a head and a heart level. The next one is novel and adaptive thinking. So you might think of this as innovation or creativity, the ability to actually think in different ways rather than the way that things have always been done. In our global workforce, cross-cultural competency is going to become a very important skill of the future. The next one is computational thinking. And the idea behind this is about being good at numbers. And it's not just being able to do maths in your head, but it's being able to analyze and interpret data. Because some of that computers can do for you, but sometimes they're going to spew out numbers, which they're going to then ask you to analyze and find the meaning in them. So that's computational thinking. And the next one, which is very common, and I think if you ask many people, they say, yeah, you need to be good at new media. So that's social media, multimedia, the new ways that people communicate, and how you can use that to reach people and to influence people. Influencing skills was one of the things that was identified earlier. The next one is called transdisciplinarity, which is the idea that you can work not just in a single discipline, but that you can work you have skills across multiple disciplines, and that you can combine them. So you can work transdiscipline in that way. So it's rather than being the master of one trade, you kind of become jack of all trades as well. But you become master of as many as you can as well. So it's the ability to think, to sit above any one area of expertise and be able to look across them. And the next one is the design mindset. And this doesn't mean artistic design. This means being able to design systems, processes, workflows, ways of doing things so that other people can then plug into that, or software can plug into that. So being able to create new ways of doing things. So think of it as new ways of doing things. And the last one's an interesting one, which is called, the next one, the second last one, is an interesting one, which is called cognitive load management, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're all super busy at the moment and we've got information overload. So the people who will be able to manage that the best, so cognitive load, in other words, the load on their brain and their thinking, the people who are able to manage that the best are the ones who are going to be highly valued and highly skilled. And the last one is what we're doing right now. It's called virtual collaboration. So the ability for you to be able to collaborate with people who aren't in the same room as you are, and in multiple different ways. So whether it's whether you're doing it through audio or video, whether you're doing it immediately. So the people here who are live on the webinar are doing this immediately. We're collaborating, say on that Blackboard earlier. The people who are watching the recording are doing this in a deferred mode, so that they weren't there at the time that the webinar was being run. So how can you collaborate that way? And how can you learn how to be more skilled at that? So, okay, so here are the 10 again. The 10 skills for the future workforce. Okay, so sense making, social intelligence, novel and adaptive thinking, cross-cultural competency, and so on. So we've got all those 10. And the three others that you added on that virtual Blackboard that I showed you earlier do fit in there. So we had verbal communication, which fits into social intelligence. We had data modeling, which is part of computational thinking. And we had influencing skills, which is part of social intelligence, and that new media literacy. So being able to not just use new media, but also to be able to influence through it. Okay, so I'm going to stop and ask you a question. In a minute. So get your fingers ready at the keypad, ready to at your keyboards, ready to type, because the question I want to ask you is, which of those skills do you need? So if you think about yourself, your team, and your organization, I'm going to show you the slide again, so don't worry if you haven't written them down. Which of those skills do you most need? So which of those do you think are most lacking at the moment, and are going to be important for your business? So here are the 10 again, and I'm going to just ask you, type in the question box, which of those skills are the ones that are going to be most important for your business in the future, and you perhaps don't have the strongest skills in that area. For example, if you're not strong in social media, but you know that social media is going to be important to you in the next 2, 5, or 10 years, then type in new media literacy. And I don't mind if you just type in the initials, and I'll interpret it from there just to give you to make it a bit quicker for you. So there may be more than one. Okay, so any of those that you think are going to be useful to you, write them down. So in this case, I'm asking you to write them down for yourself, but also share them in the question box, and I'll read them out. I'll keep this anonymous. Okay, so somebody said design mindset. Yep, so that's being able to create processes. Okay, here, these are coming through now. New media literacy and design mindset. Novel and adaptive thinking. Cross-cultural competency. Cognitive load management. Sense making. Great. Okay, great. So that's the first step. I think that I'm just going to wait and see if anyone's got any more. Yep, new media literacy is coming through a couple of times, and design management. Okay, so that's really good. Okay, so the first step is to identify which of those skills you're going to need in your team, in your organization. And this applies whether you're a large organization and you're leading it as a senior leader, or whether you're running your own tiny little micro business, but you're going to outsource a whole bunch of other skills that you don't want to do and that you're not skilled at doing. So this is a really good blueprint for you to identify which of those skills do you not have. And the next step we're going to do is to say, okay, well, who have you got to do who have those skills? So that is the next question. Okay, so the next question is, who do you have? So if you think about everybody in your team, and as I said, that this is about rising stars, but you can think of everybody as being potentially a rising star. So again, I'm going to give you that list of 10 again. So who have you got in your teams who are good at any one of these 10 things? So just for the moment, put aside the ones that you identified as most important to you, but just think, okay, I know that Rajiv is really good at new media literacy. I know that Jesse is fantastic at cross-cultural competency. Okay, so make that list for yourself. And while you're doing that, can you also don't share the names in the question box, but just say the skills that you know that you've already got covered within your team. Okay, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're working in that area. It just means that you know that they've got those skills and they're kind of interested in it. So it might be the person who's goofing off on Facebook when they should be working, but maybe she's the person who should be given the opportunities to work in that whole new media literacy area. Maybe she should be the person who's given her skills and her energy is diverted to that part of your business. Okay, so I'm just seeing things coming in. Okay, we'll just see to computational thinking, sense making, and cognitive load management. Great. So you've got somebody or you've got one or more people who've got skills there. Great. New media literacy, computational thinking, SI, social intelligence. Great. New media literacy, cognitive load management. Great. And social intelligence, new media literacy. And virtual collaboration. Good. I think that's the first time that came up. Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to give you an example of some. I'm just going to wait a bit. There's a couple of others coming in. Okay, so DM design mindset, CCC, which is cross-cultural competency. Good. Okay, so before I'm going to give you an example of somebody who does this. But before we do that, I'm now going to ask you to challenge you to say, those people that you've identified as having those skills, are they working in their strengths? So is it that they've got those skills and they're putting them to use within your organization, within your business? Or is it that you know they've got those skills, but their day job is quite different, or their job description is quite different from that? And I'm not asking you to respond publicly here, but if you found people who've got certain skills, and especially if they cross over with the skills that you think you need, and they're not already working in that space, then help them do that. So help them make that transition, because then everybody wins. Okay, so that's the best case scenario. Just to give you one example, there was a story written that came out last year about Dan from Optus, who's the Optus Facebook manager, because Dan, who actually turned out to be a real person, even though somebody thought that some people thought, no, this is just a marketing team. It's too clever to be one person. But he turns out to be a real person, is somebody who was high in social intelligence and high in social media skills, because he was responding to people who were making snarky comments about Optus, and particularly about Optus advertising. And Optus was advertising in multiple languages, and there was some kind of racist comments coming through on the Optus Facebook page. And rather than Optus just deleting those comments, Dan was able to respond to them in a humorous but totally appropriate way, and made a lot of fans for Optus by the way he did it. So that was an example of somebody who had those skills and was given the opportunity to display those skills. So that's what you're looking for. That's really what you're looking for. I just see a couple of questions coming in. Yeah, okay, so somebody said, I'll keep this anonymous. Somebody says his CLM might be a bit dodgy, so it's cognitive load management. Yeah, so look, some of the skills are things that you need, that I think you'd need to to train all your people in. The whole idea of cognitive load management or productivity or managing information overload is something that we all need. Yeah, great. Okay, so there are people in your organization who will absolutely love to rise to the occasion if you give them something that they care about, and if it's one of those STEM skills for the future that you think you need, and then everybody wins. Towards the end of World War II, when the Americans asked Winston Churchill, what do you need? What do you need for the war effort? And he said this, he said, give us the tools and we will finish the job. And I think there are a lot of people in your organization who have untapped potential. They've got untapped talent simply because they're not in the area that is their area of mastery. So give them the tools and they will do the job for you. The challenge with that and the risk with that is that if they don't have the right judgment, if they don't have good judgment, it's a challenge for them and it's a risk for you because you might be putting them outside their comfort zone, which to start off with is okay, but if you take them way outside their comfort zone, it might cause a problem. So the really important thing to do with the people in your team, and again, this applies whether they're in the same office or they're freelancers, is to build their judgment. So let me just quickly show you this model, which looks at how much control you have over people or how much freedom you give them, which is horizontally, and whether they've got poor judgment or good judgment. And poor judgment is natural. When somebody comes into a business, they generally have poor judgment. If they've just come out of university or they've just come from a new industry or even a new business in the same industry, they don't understand your business, so they have poor judgment. But if you think about these four areas, if they first come in and they've got poor judgment, then you need to have tight controls. Generally. So that's a safe place to be in. And some businesses stay there forever with their people. They just keep them under tight control and they don't let them do anything. They don't give them any freedom and they stay safe. But if you just stay safe, you get passed by the people who are doing better, by the businesses who are doing better. So what people try to do then, the wrong thing to do is they give them more freedom. But they haven't taught them how to have good judgment. They haven't given them the wisdom that they themselves have. So that becomes risky. This is the person who's released to let loose on the company's social media Facebook page, and they make an inappropriate comment to a customer, and then that gets snapped and then published in media, and it goes viral, and that damages the business's reputation. So you can't do that. What you need to do is build judgment in your people. But if you build judgment and still maintain control, then it's a really wasted opportunity because now you've got these people who have got the judgment to be able to do more, but you're not giving them the opportunity to do that. And eventually they'll leave. The best people, the rising stars, will figure out that they'll rise much faster somewhere else. So what you want to do, the most powerful place to be in, is to build judgment in people and then give them the freedom. And you kind of do that, not necessarily build the best judgment before you give them any freedom. You kind of oscillate between them. So give them a bit of judgment, give them more freedom, give them a bit more freedom, and so on until you build that. So that's how to get the most out of the rising stars in your team. That's the key to it. It's to build their judgment, and as I've talked about earlier, in areas that they've got skills in, and ideally in areas that you need. And given that we're being future-oriented here, look at things that are important for their future, not just for what they need now, although you might start with what they need now. So, as I said, I've got some additional resources here because we don't have time to go into that whole build their judgment in full detail. So just make sure that when we finish, you'll be asked to fill in an exit survey, and when you do that, you'll get that report that I wrote about building their judgment. I want to know what you're going to do. So as a result of today's webinar, what are you actually going to do? And I'd really love you, I'm going to keep this anonymous, but share in the question box what you're going to do as a result of some of the things we covered. So we looked at the skills for the future, the things that you've got, the things that you need, and then who have you got who can fill those skills, and then looking at building judgment. Somebody here says, and we'll keep this anonymous, Gihan, as the operator of 2 successful small companies, I can't help feeling that in business today, we're getting too caught up in jargon. Yeah, we have a strict rule of keeping things simple. That's been one of the underlying keys to our success. Yep, proven over 30 years with global markets. Yep, absolutely right. Agree with that. Yeah, okay, so this person has identified somebody and says checking out his and my own cognitive load management. Great, so that's really good. Presented as part of our organization's future strategy plan for our business. Fantastic. So the person has said this, you can watch the webinar recording, and you're most welcome to then present some of the ideas there. And just give me credit. I'm happy for you to use it. Just give me credit as part of your future strategy plan. And you can see here I've got things that are immediate as well as things that are that you might put on, but you might put for the future as well. But I would suggest not make it any longer than a 90-day project. So if you identify somebody in your team that you think, wow, they really can shine in this area, and I'm not making full use of them, give them the opportunity. Don't wait until their annual performance review. Not a good thing anyway, but don't wait for a year before you decide to switch them on onto something that might switch them on as well. Okay, so thank you for sharing those things. If you've got any questions or comments, then please email me. So if you're interested in my speaking, then you can go to gihanspeaks.com, but you can also email me directly. I read and respond to all my emails at gihanpereira.com. There's a couple of things that are coming up next. So I'm running a workshop, which is a one-day workshop to help people plan their book. So if you're thinking of writing a book and you're thinking of becoming an author, but you don't know the process of doing it, then come along to this one-day masterclass. You can find out about it and register at fasttrackyourbook.com. And the idea behind it is that there are so many people here who are, and I can recognize that from the people whose names I recognize on the webinar, who might want to write a book, and you know that it's going to be valuable to you for your business because it's a great marketing tool and positioning tool, but you just don't know the process of it. So you're happy to do the writing if you knew how to then take the writing and convert it into a book. So I'll talk about how to put the structure together, how to find and structure stories, how to lay it all out, where to find the people. So the people that I use in Business Book in a Box, I'll give you the list of all the direct contact details, which will save you, hours and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in having to do the research yourself. Talk about the stuff like ISBNs, how you get testimonials for your book before you get it published, how you get somebody to write a foreword for your book, somebody well known, and so on. So all of that's a one-day program that I'm running. I'm running it in both Sydney and Melbourne. So in Sydney on the 5th of August and in Melbourne on the 23rd of September. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to have you there. So just register at fasttrackyourbook.com. The next webinar in this series is coming up in a month's time. But before that, next week, my other webinar series, which you can sign up at internetbusinessrevolution.net. I know many people here already registered for that. But if you're not, sign up to that one and we'll talk about positioning and building your authority. So that's coming up next week. Thanks everyone for coming today. Thanks everyone for participating. I really appreciate the fact that you did participate because the webinar is much better because of the participation. As I said, if you've got any questions or comments, then contact me through my website. It's at gihanpereira.com. You'll find all my contact details there. Thanks everyone and have a great day. Bye for now.